like and subscribe. Redditors who have been in coma for a long time, 1 year, what was it like to wake up again? And how did you adjust to literally a long fast forward? I had no idea where I was. I had no idea what happened. Months later I was still learning about who did, or didn't, visit, pray, call, ask. Finances were a total mess, trust me, companies do not care. Massive debt and financial penalties. And took over 18 months to get a job after painful physical rehabilitation, and explaining over and over that I was in a coma, not just not working. Then COVID. Hollywood's depiction of waking from a coma is shockingly wrong. I was really stunned when my friend was in one for about a month and had to relearn virtually every basic function. Does it count if you cannot remember a single thing for 6 to 8 weeks? I was technically out, but my wife says she had a conversation with me every day. I don't remember anything but was medically sedated for almost 2 months after getting hit by a car cycling. Anyway, I could not walk or use any extremities upon coming to. Extreme muscle atrophy required almost 2 years of PT to regain full independence. Not fun at all. That's crazy. Cars should not ride bicycles. Glad you're okay now. My sister was in a car accident and sustained a massive head injury. She was in a coma for over 5 months. Waking up from a comatose, no, it happened suddenly. It was gradual. She had to relearn everything starting with swallowing. She was missing her last year of high school and she cannot remember many things since her accident. Her short-term memory was damaged. Her damaged memory makes her very frustrated. Edit to at, her accident was in 1994. She graduated in 1993. She cannot remember grade 12. Sorry for the confusing statement. This was stunning for the family, because she had *JUST* graduated. That whole year was gone. Second edit, the story of what happened. That weekend my sister had double booked herself. She was supposed to head to a car rally with me and my husband. She came to me and asked me if it was alright if she went to Whitbeer's with her best friends. This has bothered me for decades. If I had been our sister, I would have told her to postpone her trip and come with us. But I wasn't, and I'm still not like that. I told her to go have fun with her friends. That Saturday we got the call that she had been in a car accident. She was traveling down a rural highway when a lady blew a stop sign. My sister swerved to the left to avoid her. She's left-handed. Her car started to spin. She tried to correct and ended up swerving the car into oncoming traffic. She hit a pickup truck that was driving in the opposing lane and her car crumbled. She had her driver's side window partially down. Her head slammed down on the open window and she was cut from her ear to her chin. She was thrown against her friend in the passenger seat and broke her clavicle and her pelvis. Her friends had minor injuries. She was wearing her seatbelt, but the twisty nature of the collision swung her from side to side. They used the jaws of life to extricate her from the vehicle. She was posturing, which is what happens when a person has a massive head injury. The emergency crew had a ferry return to dock so they could load her on. For 3 days we didn't know if she was going to survive. They drilled a hole in her head to relieve the pressure that was building due to her brain bleeding. She survived. Our family has been by her side ever since. I was out for just over a month. It was surreal, like a dream I couldn't quite wake up from. When I woke up, my arms and legs didn't work, and my vision and thoughts were really fuzzy. I thought I was out for a few days, and was unpleasantly surprised to know it has been over a month. I was out for 40 days after a motorcycle accident, but I don't remember much for about 6 weeks after that as well. I was sedated with ketamine and a mix of opiates, and started to wean off of them while still on a ventilator and ECMO. I was extremely confused and seeing double, so I was terrified. Communicating was very hard because of the confusion, and that I couldn't talk or write. The thing I remember most vividly is the insane hallucinations I had as a result of the ketamine. I was hallucinating something that was making me freak out and try to rip the tubes out of me, including my ventilator. chest tubes, and arterial line, so they had no choice but to tie my limbs down and put boxing gloves on my hands. I had no idea I was doing any of that, but I had moments where I was significantly more aware of what was going on, which was so frustrating, because I was completely tied down and again, couldn't communicate. The doctors and nurses kept trying to explain to me what I was doing, and that I needed to stop, but I did not understand. I felt like I was being tortured, and I couldn't understand why. At the time of my accident, I was in an online relationship that had become very rocky. I had booked a flight to meet the girl and my accident happened the day before my flight. This was only somewhat of a coincidence, as I was riding my motorcycle extremely recklessly due to my emotions and frustration in the relationship, and with my life for other reasons. My family knew about my relationship, and was able to tell her, but it wasn't until about 3 months after the day of the accident, that I talked to her for the first time, by sending her a video. One of my respiratory therapists put a device on my tracheostomy, so I was able to talk. This was an extremely emotional moment and my mom was the first person to hear my voice. I used the device to talk on the phone with the girl, but it was difficult because the ventilator was loud and the device did not sound like my normal voice. My relationship with her was not the same and not recoverable. In hindsight, this was for the better, but in the moment, despite all the terrible things I was experiencing, the feeling of having lost the connection with this girl, who was my first love, was awful. By this time I was becoming completely aware of what I did and what happened, and extremely conscious of what I had put my mom through, as she had been by my side every day in the hospital, not knowing if I would survive, or if I had sustained significant brain damage. After 5 months in the hospital I was transferred to a rehabilitation facility, and 2 weeks later, December 2019, discharged home with a wheelchair and walker. I was gaining the ability to walk short distances on my own and even decided to start college again. Then COVID hit, and I also experienced some unfortunate medical complications that kept me in and out of the hospital for most of 2020. This is all very recent, but every aspect of my life has changed post-accident. My finances are in ruin. My physical health and pain is terrible, but given the fact that I have all my limbs and can still walk, I feel like I can't complain. I value time completely differently because of my continuing medical complications. I don't think I will live very long. It's a lot harder for me to get angry or upset about anything because it all feels insignificant compared to being tied down, unable to communicate, and in pain. I could write a book filled with details of the past and how I'm doing now, so I'll cut it off here. Edit should clarify that I can speak perfectly fine now with my original voice. My tracheostomy hole closed well. While it was closing, I could force air out of the tiny hole, and it sounded like a kazoo. I get tired of hearing myself talk about this, as it has become my entire identity and I don't like that feeling. Someday I'll make a blog detailing some of my unique medical experiences so the next me won't feel so alone when they Google their issues. Thanks everyone for the kind words. I was in a coma for 3 weeks. Not that long, but my dreams made me feel like I was out for decades. I was really confused and didn't understand where I was or why. Sounds like the guy who made a post about how he lived an entire lifetime, married, kids, everything, only to wake up from the coma and realize it was all fake. I feel like the state should automatically give you disability, or at least assign you a caseworker to suspend your bills and store your stuff while you are in a coma. Like, there should be a system where the hospital logs you as a coma patient and then social services step in. WTF. My uncle and dad were in a terrible wreck when they were both 19. My dad was out about 6 to 7 hours, remembers nothing. My uncle was in a coma for 6 weeks. He said he could hear every conversation, knew when people visited him, but he couldn't communicate or move a muscle. He can still recall conversations people had while visiting him. He said his greatest fear was they would think he was dead and bury him. He was terrified because he couldn't react or communicate and didn't know what they would do with him. Then he woke up. He had some lifelong disabilities, but went on to become the VP at his company in Texas. Edit. Wow, I had no idea you awesome people would give my uncle's story so much response. Thanks for the awards. Well, while I was comatose, my girlfriend married a billionaire, a nerd took my job, and the worst part was my butler died. I miss you every day, Woodhouse. Best friend of an old colleague of mine who I met a few times at drinks etc. She was in a car accident when she was about 20, spent a few months in a coma. Upon waking up apparently her whole personality changed, especially her goals and stuff. Before the accident she wanted me to a teacher, and was in uni, but after the accident she couldn't think of anything worse, and wanted to become a hairdresser. She couldn't remember a lot of her teenage years, and she said some things like her favorite food and TV shows had changed, from what people told her she liked beforehand, and taste in music. I was absolutely flabbergasted by what she was telling me. Most people who are in a coma that long will have mush for brains. It's also extremely rare to regain any degree of consciousness after a whole year. If they do, they will not prioritize catching up on world events and TV shows. They will be learning to speak, eat, move, recognize friends and family, the names items around them, etc. I went comatose twice in my life, 7 to 10 hours the time, and I've no recollection of the second time. Both originating from the same head condition, hydrocephalic pressurization, and I ended up a potato. The waking up from the first coma, I was dazed but functional. Came to and tried to figure out why I was tied down to the hospital bed, while I've got all my family members standing in my room crying. I could talk and think, it was just the haze of coming out of anesthesia that made things difficult that time. I was only in the hospital a week, but had to relearn how to walk. The second coma, I have no recollection of. It's like my brain intentionally decided to shield me from the event, but from what I've gathered, I went from functioning normal up to the day before, told family I was going to take a nap, and proceeded to sleep for about approximate 18 hours. My mom and brother managed to get me to wake up long enough to walk out to their car, while my boyfriend pulled up to check up on me. Some hours later, after the second surgery, I wake up and I'm talking, conversing to everyone like normal. My partner says it was terrifying to experience, but the absolute worst part was after coming to, I kept saying I wanted Sis's pizza cause it just looked so tasty. You've been visited by the ghost of a very important man. Pay your respects by liking and subscribing, and he'll grant you 3 weeks of good luck.